Hey friends, it's Robin. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a bit of a recent reads catch up. This is not all of the books that I've read since I started my break. That would be too many books to talk about in a video. This is a list of 13 books that I either had things to say about, or I got for review, or I thought people would be interested in. I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet. One, that 13 books is a lot of books to talk about. Two, some of these are from February, so I barely remember what they're about. And three, I have been filming and doing stuff all day, and I'm tired. So we're gonna go through this kind of quick. Starting at the top, we have Murder Road by Simone St. James, which is the latest paranormal mystery thriller from this author. I give this one 3.5 stars. It wasn't my favorite of her books, but it's definitely like a classic Simone St. James, where you have this paranormal thing happening and someone gets wrapped up in it and needs to figure out the mystery behind this paranormal element. There's some commentary on something in this book. It was about a hitchhiker who ends up going missing, and it's kind of about men taking advantage of women and all these women going missing on this creepy road. It's also historical. It was set in the 90s, which still hurts me to say that 90s is historical now, but I had a good time with it. Like I said, I gave it a 3.5 stars. It was a really fast, quick read. The audiobook was great. It's just not my favorite of hers, and it's not one that I'm going to necessarily think about really often, but it's definitely one that's easily recommendable. I think this is a book that a lot of people could like and enjoy. It's a very classic mystery. You have a fun setting and a invasive small town, and it was a good time. The next one is A Funny Story by Emily Henry, which I gave 5 stars. I think I've given every single Emily Henry book, like contemporary adult book, 5 stars. So I'm not surprised that I gave this one 5 stars. You have classic Emily Henry humor. You have like the same kind of banter between the characters, the same kind of setup for a story, opposites attract, forced proximity. It's a very classic Emily Henry book, but I love that setup, and I love her writing, and I love the humor, and I loved this one. This one is following a heroine and a hero who end up becoming roommates because her fiance and his longtime girlfriend end up leaving them for each other and are going to get married, and now these two are kind of like down and out and mourning the loss of their relationship. And that kind of brings them together, and in kind of an accidental attempt to get revenge and make their exes feel uncomfortable, they tell someone that they are dating. It leads them down this road to have an opposites attract romance, and it was really cute. I feel like Emily Henry books really always sum up millennial experiences, and it works for me. After that is A Promise of Paradot. Is it Paradot or Paradot? I probably could have looked that up before sitting down to film, but I didn't. This is book 2 in the Sacred Stones series. Book 1 was Dawn of Onyx, and then the last book actually comes out this year, I believe. This was the sequel. It picks up right where book 1 left off. I'm not going to talk about the plot of this one because it would spoil book 1, but it is a fantasy romance. You have a heroine who gets taken away, and she's in a rival kingdom with the king who's evil but is not actually evil, and they have an enemies to lovers romance. You see where this is going. Classic fantasy romance. I really liked book 1. I gave it 4 stars, and I gave it 4 stars upon reread. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was still good, and I still really liked it, and I do plan to continue, but this definitely had that like middle book syndrome thing where like the middle half of this book was just a lot of them talking about things that they need to do, and so it was just like prep for the final thing. The last like chunk of this book was really great, and I liked how the romance progressed, and I didn't see the ending of this one coming, and I'm very interested in picking up the last book. It slowed down a lot in the middle. There was a lot of that. This is all the planning that we need to do, and we need to go try to get this person on our side, and I don't know. It wasn't as engaging and fun as book 1, but I like where it ended up, and I'm excited to get to book 3. Then we have The Homewrecker by Sarah Kate. I think this is actually the only indie book that I included on this list, only because most of the indie books that I read were all novellas, and I talked about a lot of those over on Instagram. This is the next book in the, is it like the Good Brothers series? And this is a series following all of these brothers whose father was this like preacher at this really creepy church. In book one, one of the guys breaks away from his family and starts dating this woman and opens up the sex club. And in this book, we're getting his brother, who is in this marriage to this woman who is like his everything, but their marriage is really struggling and they're having communication issues. They love each other desperately, but they just feel like there's like this wall between them that they can't cross. And one of the sex workers at the brothers club ends up coming into their orbit for reasons and helps them break down that wall by becoming their third. And it was great. I gave this one 4 stars. I liked it a lot. I really liked the dynamic between all of them. I liked how the hero who came into the marriage completely balanced out the relationship and like was necessary to their relationship working. It's a difficult balance to hit because you have these people who have a lot of history, who've been together for a very long time, and it could feel imbalanced, but him coming into this relationship that was struggling actually made the relationship plausible. And I really liked their dynamic and their connection to each other. Everybody has like a specific connection to the other person. I thought it was really well done. I love how sex positive the Sarah Kay's books are, and this one was no exception. Then we have Shadowlands Omega by Elizabeth Stevens, which is a chunky beast. And Elizabeth Stevens actually sent me this book with some art prints, and I loved this book so much. I love this series. I'm obsessed with this series. This one is following 2 different main characters, but following the plot of book 1. So there's one overarching plot across the series, but we're going to follow different characters. I'm assuming all of the different Omegas. We are following in this book the Shadowlands Omega, who we met in book 1, and his journey back to his territory and how the main issues in book 1 have kind of followed him and started to impact his territory. And it's him finding his Omega, and I liked it a lot. It's definitely like a different classes. The heroine, her family does something bad at the beginning of the book and is essentially an enemy to the crown or enemy to the king. And so he finds his essentially his mate, his like other half, his Omega, and her family is a bunch of traitors. And so it creates this really intense dynamic between the two of them. Obviously, kind of untrusting of each other and antagonistic. And even though she didn't do anything, she has feelings about how the king handled the situation, and he has feelings about her being tied to this family. It is them fighting each other tooth and nail through this whole book, while also being absurdly attracted to each other. And I love that dynamic. One of my favorite books of April was Only and Forever by Chloe Leese. This is the final book in the Bergman Brothers series. I gave this 5 stars. I'm so sad to see the series ending. I don't know, like, I'm glad we finally got Vigo's story, and I really hope that Chloe Leese decides to write a spinoff, but I'm so sad to say goodbye to these characters and to this family because I love them so much. This was obviously Vigo's romance, and he is the big romantic of the family. He's the meddler. He's the one that like inserted himself into all of his siblings' relationships, and he really wants his person, and he feels like he just can't find them. Along comes Tallulah, who is not about relationships. Her parents are a bit of a disaster, and she doesn't want love or believe in love. The two of them end up striking up this deal where he is going to help her write her next book, and she is going to help him start his bookstore. They really open up the other person's eyes to different points of views. So he helps her believe in love, and she helps him understand that romances, like a physical book romance, is not real life. Just because his romance doesn't turn out like all the ones that he read doesn't mean that it's not valid and not perfect for him. I loved them. I loved them so much. The heroine is also chronically ill. She has type 1 diabetes, and the hero has ADHD. There's a scene in here that like broke my heart because the heroine wakes up in the middle of the night because her monitor is going off because her blood sugar is dropping. The hero like helps her out, and like everything is fine, But she has this kind of like breakdown moment where she is talking about how betrayed she feels by her body and how frustrating it is. And I was just like, I could not. Big same. On to the next, we have A Grave Robbery by Deanna Raybourn, which was about the time where I realized I was having a 5-star streak. And I gave this one 5 stars. This is my favorite of the Veronica Speedwell books to date. This is what, book 7 or 8 or something like that? I don't even know anymore. It's my favorite. I loved this one so frickin' much. It was so good. At this point, Veronica and Stoker are in a relationship. So if you haven't read this series, each book stands on its own. Like, it has its own self-contained mystery. So you can skip books and like jump around, because everything at the beginning of the book, like any relevant, pertinent information, is introduced at the beginning of the book anyways. The only thing you're going to miss out on is the relationship between Stoker and Veronica. And it is a very, very slow burn. We have been like working our way here. And at this point, they are finally like together and settled. I loved their romance so much. I also really like how even though their relationship is settled, you're still getting to see the growth of their relationship at this point. Because while they have a lot of similarities, they're very different people. Veronica is hard-headed as all hell and kind of doesn't think before she leaps and is willing to throw herself into any situation. And Stoker really wants to protect her and save her from herself sometimes. And he's learning where to draw boundaries and where to just like let her be herself. Veronica at the same time is learning that maybe sometimes she should let Stoker protect her, that sometimes she shouldn't just leap into these insane situations. And I really enjoyed that whole thing. The like mystery element in this one was so cool. Essentially, we're dealing with wax figures, except the wax figure that comes into their possession is not wax, it is a human. I find wax things to be horrifying. Like, they terrified the shit out of me. And so it gave that like creepy element to it where it just like made my skin crawl, because it freaks me out to even think about these. There was one time they go into a house and there's like a room, this guy has like a room of them, and I'm just like, ugh, gross. I liked all the twists and turns on the reveals. The big thing at the end was great. I loved how some of the side characters got more time and acknowledged that Veronica can overstep, and they are main characters too. It was just so well done. If you haven't read this series, get on it. You're missing out. And then the last 5-star, I'm telling you, there was such a good streak in here of 5 stars, was Archangels Lineage by Nalini Singh. This is book 15, 16, something like that. Of all of them, I've only given out 3 5 stars, and this was one of them. I sobbed, like full on sobbed at the end of this book. It got me. I don't know if we're getting more books in the series. I feel like at this point, Nalini Singh could end it at any time, and that makes me very nervous. I want more books. I will read endless books in the series. I just really like these characters. There's so many more characters that we could have books about. So I'm kind of hoping that this is kickstarting a new main plot, because we do get some like new characters and history things in this one. The main thing in this one, again, I'm going to keep this really vague because I don't want to spoil anything, is we're getting a lot of history of the angels, because something is possibly causing the world to end again, which is like a big thing in the series. They need to learn some stuff about the angels' history in order to save the world. This book deals very heavily with grief as well. One of the main elements throughout this is our heroine's family history and the loss of her mother and her disconnect with her father. A lot of that comes to head in this book. Oof, that final scene. I lost it. Unfortunately, from there, we have a lot of 3.5 stars. The Boyfriend Subscription by Stephen Salvador was 3.5 stars. I liked parts of this book, and parts of it just didn't hit quite right. I loved the concept of this because we have a hero who is coming from this really wealthy family, but kind of cuts himself off to do his own thing because he doesn't want to be under his father's thumb anymore. And he starts a like sex work app. He doesn't believe in love for a lot of different reasons. And he ends up meeting this guy who he has an immediate connection with. Our hero offers the other guy to essentially be an escort. He's like, I will pay you to be my boyfriend. And that guy desperately needs the money, like a lot, because he's getting out of a marriage and just lost his business and has no idea what to do next. And the two of them fall into this arrangement, and the two of them have a ton of chemistry, and they have a lot of baggage that they need to work through. I think where this book went wrong for me is it was too much drama. Give me the drama. I love it. But this book, there was too much. It was too much. There were so many messy bits on top of each other. The turning point, like that's too far, is at the very end. There's an essay element that is introduced, and I was just like, we didn't need to go there. And so this book kind of kept losing stars for me as the book went on. And the only reason I gave it a 3.5 instead of a 3 is because I think the character work was really well done. We get to see a lot of growth of the characters, not just in their relationship, but on their own as well. And I did appreciate that. This is going to be one that I have a hard time recommending. I think it has its audience, and I think it did some things really well. Do as you will with that review, I guess. Then we have Wake Me Most Wickedly by Felicia Grossman, which I did give 4 stars. This series, on the other hand, is so recommendable. I think that this is the type of historical romance that pretty much like, even if you don't read historical romance, this is the type of historical romance that I think could work for a really big audience. The characters are fantastic. It's not following your like stereotypical historical romance characters, and it has so much history and culture integrated into the story that I absolutely love. Felicia Grossman is a Jewish author, and she is writing about Jewish characters set during Victorian London and the dynamic of that community during that time period, and how their place in their Jewish community versus a London community versus how all of that is impacted simply by where they were born, the type of Jew that they are, the place where they live, their jobs, things like that. We are following a heroine who is quote unquote considered like the worst kind of Jew because she runs a pawn shop. Even though the gentry comes and uses said pawn shop, she is the bad person. She isn't very well off, and her parents ended up getting arrested for selling stolen stuff. So she's shunned not only from the community as a large, but from the Jewish community itself, because once somebody ends up kind of like being like the bad guy, they cut them off because they don't want to be associated with that. They don't want people to start hating them. And there's just so much good commentary on white supremacy and classism, and it was fantastic. This is a very loose Snow White retelling. All of them are gender bent in this series, so the hero is like quote unquote Snow White, where he has a parent figure that might be up to something shady, and he is possibly being taken advantage of. It's very, very loose. I didn't actually see it until like the very end. The hero worships the ground that the heroine walks on as well, which I love to see. So if you don't read historical romance, but you kind of want to dip your toe in, this series is a great one. And like I said, the historical and cultural elements are so integrated into the story. It's fantastic. I can't say enough good things. Then I read Lucky Bounce by Kate Neri. This was one that I had gotten for review back in January and never read because the reviews were not that great. And I ended up just kind of picking it up on a whim, and I gave it 3 stars. I actually liked the romance part itself. I liked the setup. We're following a hero who is a gym teacher. As the new school year is starting, he has a new student and he meets the father, and the father is his all-time favorite hockey player. It is the guy he has a crush on, and he is blown away. His world is shattered, and they end up like meeting each other over and over and over again as like friends start meddling in their lives, and they have a romance together. I liked all of that. The daughter was really cute. I liked the discussions on family. I liked their dynamic and chemistry together. But when I tell you that this had a style choice in it, and it did not work for me. That was definitely something that I had to just like look past the whole time. It was very oddly written. It was written in this like stream of consciousness. And so like there was all of these like side notes were like in parentheses and stuff like that, but it was written in a third person. And so the juxtaposition of like third person, but constantly getting the inner monologue of the character was just so odd. And so it didn't work for me. It also just kind of felt cheesy in general because you were constantly getting these like little internal monologue quips. And so I didn't like that part like at all. It was very distracting. Like I said, it was definitely something that the whole time I was like, try to look past it so that you can get to the end of this romance, but not my fave. The last book that I have physically is The Kiss Countdown by Anna Easton. I gave this one 4 stars as well. This was really, really cute. This was one of my most anticipated, like this was on my most anticipated books of the year list because we're following an astronaut and an event planner, and the two of them end up fake dating. I really liked their reluctant opposites attract romance. The hero is such a softie, but he's kind of closed off. The heroine is feisty and determined, but also a little down on her luck. And so she's having a hard time getting that confidence back that she's always had. The two of them fake date kind of accidentally because she blurts out at a coffee shop that she has a boyfriend when she runs into an ex, and the hero comes up to her and she's like, it's him, he's my boyfriend. The heroine is a little frustrating at one point because she does that whole like assumption thing, decides that that's what happened, and he has to convince her like that's not what happened. So she does that thing, but they have such good chemistry. There is a scene in here where they go on a picnic and look at the stars, and it was one of the most romantic things. And then the last book on this list was another most anticipated book, and it was actually quite a disappointment, which breaks my heart because I was the only one in the buddy read to not give it 5 stars, but that is Do Me a Favor by Kathy Yardley. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars, which if you watched my favorites of the year video from 2023, you know that role-playing was on there and I cried talking about it during my favorites video. And so I was like, this is going to be an easy 5-star. And it just wasn't. There was nothing wrong with this book. It kind of feels similar to role-playing in the fact that we have some older main characters, that it's a very soft story. This isn't this big, epic, dramatic romance. It's these two adults falling in love. It's kind of quiet and soft and sweet, but I just didn't connect to any of it the way that I did in role-playing. I have so little to say about it because I just never connected to this one. And on top of that, this is such a minor thing, and I have seen some other reviews that did comment on this, so I'm not the only one that did this. But I think that the only reason that this stuck out in my brain is because I wasn't like connecting to the story. But there is some commentary on the heroine's husband who passes away from complications with type 1 diabetes. You were kind of led to believe for a little while that it was like self-inflicted. You learn later on that it was more that some stress and life things ended up impacting his health, and it kind of spiraled from there. But there's a lot of commentary on how like the doctors would tell him that he needs to do certain things, and he would just like drink and eat whatever he wanted anyways and just like crossed his fingers. And then there was a comment about him being immunocompromised. Type 1 diabetes is not necessarily immunocompromised. You can be immunocompromised if you are on like medications and stuff, but it's an immune disorder. It's not immunocompromised. You can have a fully functioning immune system. Type 1 diabetes, it just means that your immune system is not working the way that it should. So there is a difference between immunocompromised and an immune disorder, and they aren't mutually inclusive. You can be immunocompromised and not have an immune disease. That wordage did bother me a little bit because it's not 100% accurate. But like I said, it's so nitpicky. I think it was just because I wasn't connecting to the story, but I was a little uncomfortable with the way that the discussions surrounding the husband went. I have no idea the author's relationship to type 1 diabetes. I don't know if there's someone in her life or if it was just something that she included in this book. So I don't want to say that like the representation was bad because like the way that disease and stuff works, it's so unique to every single person. So I really don't like saying that. It wasn't my favorite. That's all I could say. It didn't quite work for me. Love her books, and I'm sad that this one wasn't a bigger hit. So that is all 13 books, thank goodness, because my phone is about to die. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you thought about them, or if you've added any of them to your TBR. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I will see you in my next one. Bye.